bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the
Whoa! I don't know what happened. What happened? It just like I thought I was playing the video. All right, let's do one more.
You have lost your mind. Homosexuality should be a crime. They ought to take all the homosexuals and put them all on a boat and give them enough gas to get halfway out in the middle of the ocean and let the sharks eat them. So there's no way to stop me. There's no way to stop the truth. This isn't preaching, this is hate speech. It's both! Because we can purge out all the sissies and purge out all the fair weather Christians, purge out all the weaklings. Because we're supposed to be treating them lovingly and respectfully. Even though the Bible says they're filthy and vile. I mean, I know some of you guys are enjoying it. So don't act like I'm all alone up here. Some of you thumbed up some of those comments too, didn't you? No, I'm just saying, look, you know, hey.
Wouldn't it be great if this was in reverse and we could just purge out all the bigots? We could just purge out all the believers. We could just purge out all. We're live. We're back. The gang. No, just pretend you didn't hear that. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Pocket Locker Podcast. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. Folks, we have got a great one lined up for you once again. I hope you're all having a great weekend. Please greet your neighbor. Please grab something to drink, grab something to smoke. It's time to catch a vibe. Let's jump into the musical portion of the program, and got a couple new ones for you. Let's go. Hell no, man. I will not be pinned. I will not be made to submit. I will not quit.
Has come.
They're gonna have to kill me to get
And the
belt
land
off.
is dark, and the moon is the only light we'll see.
But I do think we're gonna see Roman versus Jay.
No, I won't
So that should be sweet.
be afraid. No, I won't.
And I'm
be
trying to find a
afraid.
fucking challenger for
Just
my
as
title.
long as you stand by me.
I'm like, am I gonna have to go modern
So
day debates?
darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall,
They were trying
or
to
the
set something up with me and Sal, but
should crumble to
Sal
the
said he
sea.
fears for his life, so, you know.
I won't cry. I won't
What's
cry.
up, man?
No, I won't shed a tear. Just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Damn, that's clean.
And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand
Cheers, gang. To you and
by
yours.
me.
Hope you're doing well.
Oh, stand
Let's drink up.
now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me.
Carrie has got shit to do today. Oh, it's great. All right, gang, y'all already know the drill. If for some reason my computer freezes, don't worry. Just sit tight and gamble in the chat, and I'll be right back. But I did get a new computer today, so after the show, I'm gonna get that set up, and that's we've been waiting for this one for a long time. I feel like I've been talking about this goddamn computer forever, but we finally got it. It's like a M1 Mac Studio, whatever the fuck. So I'm really excited about it. So yeah, we'll get to level up and get to more production shit soon. All right, let's go ahead and get the second music piece knocked out. This one's a duet or two people duo playing. Love it. Let's go.
I see the crystal raindrop fall, and the beauty of it all is when the sun comes shining through to make those rainbows in my mind. When I think of you sometime, and I wanna spend some time with you, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us.
I know,
Just
it's
the
been
two
so
of
long.
us. A building castle in the sky. Just the two two of us, you and I. We look for love, no time for tears. Where there was at ease, and it don't make no flower grow. Good things might come for those who wait, not for those who wait too late. And we're gonna go for all we knew, just the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us, just the two of us.
Such a good song.
Castle way on high, just the two of us, you and I.
It is
Hear the
badass.
crystal raindrop fall on the window down the hall, and it began the morning dew. And darling, when the morning comes and I see the morning sun, I wanna be the one with you.
Good to see you,
Just
Assembly.
the two of us. We can make it if we try, just the two of us. Just the two of us, well, just the two of us. Building castle in the sky, just the two of us, you and I.
I actually don't have it.
Just the two of us.
I definitely should
We
get
can
one.
make it if we
I've always
try,
wanted one.
just the two of us. Just the two of us.
They're pretty sweet, even when you're playing the
just
drum
the
set.
two of us. Building castle way on high, just the two of us, you and I.
When I was in high school, the other drummer in my class got a cajon and like used it, and I was like, I can't fucking. Oh God, we were so petty. Oh man, I had real drum rivals, gang. It was tough, man. All right, let's take off on today's journey. First up on the list, I just saw this actually getting ready for the show, and it just made me so happy. I wanted to share this with you guys. So literally, this is just straight out of Uncle Bobby's episode. I think yesterday, right? Like, Christians, your privilege is showing. Like, you guys put this thin veneer of love and respectability and civility on top of things. You play these fucking word games. You think people don't see what's going on, but trust me, we do. So, gang, just check this out. Christians are literally taking people to court because they're not allowed to discriminate. It's crazy. They're saying the quiet part out loud. Is wild.
Preschool in southern Colorado is suing the state's Department of Education.
Yeah, lawyers representing the school say it would have to abandon its religious practices to participate in the new universal preschool program. We saw Cindy Jensen in studio breaking down the lawsuit, the rules that the state says they must follow. Lindsay?
Rob, Diane, the attorney representing Darren Patterson Christian Academy in Buena Vista, says the school wants to hire employees who align with its religious beliefs. But the state says to participate and get funding from UPK, the school cannot discriminate against new employees based on their faith.
Kyle Hudson and his family moved to Buena Vista a few months ago.
One of the chief reasons we moved here is because of the school rating, even the public school rating.
Now he's looking for a preschool for his child and says Darren Patterson Christian Academy is high on his list.
Their lawsuit with them probably fortifies my trust in them a little bit more. that they're willing to oppose the
Gross.
state on issues that they don't find
Gross.
in line with their principles and morals.
The school filed a religious exemption against UPK to hire only those who align with its faith. Its attorney, who's with Alliance Defending Freedom, says because the academy is not run by a church, the state denied it. And only preschools that are a part of a church can get partial religious exemption.
The state of Colorado is enforcing rules that really don't make a whole lot of sense. If it's opposed to religious discrimination, it's hard to understand how that partial exemption is allowed.
Darren Patterson Christian
Why
Academy
are other
welcomes
people
families
allowed
from
to
all
discriminate?
backgrounds, but employees must have Christian beliefs and values.
And to be a Christian school, you have to hire Christian employees, and you have to be able to operate
Look how gleeful
your
they
school
are.
consistently with your religious beliefs. And that's all Darren Patterson Christian Academy is asking to do here.
The school's attorney tells me the state says the academy must either comply or opt out of the program. I contacted the state's education department about this lawsuit, but was told, quote, "We don't comment on pending litigation." Kyle says thankfully he still has some time before deciding on a preschool.
We're going to keep the options very open and decide, and see how things evolve. It's a fast evolving world, man. Who knows where we'll end up or what we'll end up doing.
The attorney says this case is not likely to have a ruling before school starts. The lawsuit states 17 families already matched with Darren Patterson Christian Academy as a universal preschool provider, which means they may have to find another school or pay out of pocket if the school opts out. Mike?
That's how insane is that, gang? That's the world we live in, and this is the thing that I hate to say pisses me off about the liberal Christians, the progressive Christians, the nice ones, the good ones. Because what are they doing about this? What are they doing about this? And how many of them will speak out against this when it matters? When there's literally asses in seats, eyeballs on pastor. They're so great to you when they see you one-on-one because they really just are punks and they don't have the audacity of their religious convictions. But they don't speak out against it. That's the thing that I could see, that's why I really threw the church out the window, baby out with the bathwater over COVID. Because why hold on to the shit? Like the one thing I kept noticing was even the religious communities that wanted to do the right thing, supported the whatever, they didn't say anything about the people who didn't. I kept like because I was playing at a church when everything got shut down. So for a while, I kept, up with the, watching the services on Sunday morning. And it never got brought up. This conversation I had with my mom, conversation, you saw it on YouTube. You just never, they don't speak out against the immorality committed in the name of their faith. But this story actually had me laughing. It really did have me laughing because it's just incredible that they're willing to take it this far to sue the state and all of this stuff. And again, it's not. Why isn't it enough to just have a Christian school? Like I went to Catholic schools growing up. I don't think anybody on our staff that wasn't a Christian would have spoken out or made it an issue. Everybody knew what time it was in that school. But it's just amazing in the climate that we're in that they just don't care. And it's why I don't want to settle in with the other believers, because when I see this type of behavior, is anybody surprised? Is anybody like, oh my goodness, I can't, why would they do something like this? God, I don't know. Like, why don't people talk about the everyday Christians' willingness to go along with discrimination in the name of Jesus? It's just, it's kind of horrific. When why can't they just buy land like the Quakers and create their own world with their own rules and leave our nation out of there crazy? That's the thing. That's the thing they're never gonna do. You know, it's I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. I'm really triggered about it. But at the end of the day, like, it's just them showing their ass in public, right? Like, I just wish more people would see it. But fuck that school. And they shouldn't be able to do that. I was happy that they were rebuffed. I think they're gonna lose the lawsuit. I hope they lose the lawsuit. To be honest, this is a situation that was just settled correctly and quite uncontroversially. Now, the one thing that's kind of ironic is I agree with them about church schools, right? Like, I don't think church schools should get a partial exception. So the one substantive area where I would actually say, like, I think they're right, but again, that's no defense for them, right? I'm saying it's the correct decision to not allow them in the program if they're going to discriminate in their employing practices. And it's also correct to not include schools run by churches. Because, again, the funding is this, public program, right? It's this tax-funded program. And it's, again, we've talked about this before, but it's just consistent with, they're protected classes. You can't discriminate against them in your hiring practices. That's the federal law. It's probably the state laws, probably the city laws, and on and on to the break of dawn, as we say. But it's amazing that they don't even just comply with the law. It's so weird. Again, they're supposed to be the party of law and order, but until, like Uncle Bobby says, until they have to follow the law and the order. All right, gang, let's jump into the main event of the evening or the afternoon or the whatever you want to call it. This is a video I saw pop up on my feed. It seemed really cool. I haven't watched it. I kind of been saving it for a stream someday. And today happens to be that day. So this is a video from the Cynical Historian. It is called 10 American Founding Myths. Let's go ahead and take off on this shit.
In the 10 Commandments. Hey, Cypher here. Perhaps the most mythologized event in U.S. history is our founding. Myths lend identity, so of course the beginning of that story holds the greatest amount of misconceptions. The founding of this republic is not only ripe for misinformation, but outright disinformation, as everyone wants to see themselves in the founders, especially at the cost of their political enemies. But it's time to dispel 10 of the most common myths. Here is the list, in no particular order, of myths and misconceptions that I'm about to bust, along with some ancillary debunkings, not on the list, along the way. Please note that these are the myths I will be busting. For some commenters always seem to believe that these are the statements that I'm trying to propagate. Quite the opposite. And like always, I included a bibliography below for those who would like to dig deeper or check my sources.
Okay.
Footnotes are, of course, in the video itself.
Oh, wow. All right. Way to be thorough. This will be, that's kind of a pointer. That points the way forward to me to like an academic type of content creation, like a point that you could actually have, peer review, right, to a level like where you're like, just do this like we write papers, man. There's footnotes, there's the work cited or the references or the bibliography down there in the description. It's a lot of work, but I fucks with it.
You'll often hear politicians say the U.S. is a Christian nation, but that is a lie, a fairly hateful one at that. Firstly, there is a fundamental difference between the term Christian nation and a nation which has a majority of Christians. The latter is...
Yeah, but see, pause the tape. See how this is the gray area? I just want to say, y'all know, this is where it makes me think of the current conversation we're having about Christian nationalism. And to me, all of this is a problem. I know what we're about to do is, a Christian nation is All right, gang, we're back. Let me share the screen. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me. I really appreciate it. Thank God. Hopefully it's our last stream with this setup. So thank y'all for bearing with me. And yeah, let's we'll get the new computer going after this one.
Country was founded upon. Next, the term Judeo-Christian values is literally Orwellian, since George Orwell coined it in 1939, and intentionally excludes the other Abrahamic religion, Islam. Also, the basis of such a term, as in the Ten Commandments, finds no usage in our Constitution. In fact, the Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights never make any specific provisions for following the Ten Commandments and violate a few in the process. Clearly, there is no basis of so-called Judeo-Christian values in our founding documents.
The Ten Commandments.
Killing is making a choice. Where are they?
The same could be said for we the people who comprise it. Not only are there plenty of non-Christians here today, but there always has been, including among the founders themselves. Ben Franklin, Ethan Allen, and Thomas Jefferson were all prominent deists. They did not believe in the divinity of Jesus. Jefferson even said basing our country on Christianity would be to lay the yoke of their own opinions on the necks of others. Some will erroneously quote John Adams saying, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to our government of any other," as though that means we're a Christian nation? That's purposefully misreading it and ignoring who he was. That letter is about immorality and makes no mention of Christ whatsoever. He was a Unitarian, whom most Christian nationalists hate. He was also quite secular.
Thomas, for God's sake, listen to me.
Pushing through the First Amendment, which says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The treaty his minister got Congress to ratify in 1797 clearly states, the government of the USA is not, in any sense, founded on the Christian religion. The common usage of Christian nationalism in the US, which is similar to dominionism abroad, is to evangelize others and deny anyone outside that fold, especially people who are not white Anglo-Saxon Protestants or WASPs. It is a form of white supremacy masquerading as a historical interpretation. We were founded on Enlightenment principles, as in the intellectual movement that often advanced by specifically denying dominionism as medieval and barbarous. The philosophical heart of our revolution, and the person who truly convinced the delegates of the Continental Congress to declare independence through his pamphleteering, was Thomas Paine. And he was such an outspoken advocate of deism and a critic of Christianity that he eventually ostracized himself. Recognizing the founding generation's secularism, evangelicals began another great awakening in the early 19th century to bring back the religion lost by such modern values. And every Christian nationalist movement since has followed the same reactionary path. From McCarthyism modifying everything to include mentions of God in order to somehow defeat the atheist Soviet Union.
All right, pause the tape real quick. I wanted to let him get through this section, but this just, he got me with this one. I was thinking about this, right? And I think sometimes the way I hear atheists talk about this particular thing, like, brings us a false sense of comfort, right? It's often said, sort of like, oh, well, you know, the anthem or the Pledge of Allegiance or the money didn't really originally have God in it or on it or whatever. And I get that that's sort of a relieving way to sort of reclaim this sort of secular intention, right? And I think that that's important historically. But we shouldn't overlook the fact that those efforts happened and they were successful, right? Which is, to me, alarming, right? Because of it. So it's like it's no great thing to me that it used to not have God in it and then people thought it was okay to put God in it. To me, like that's like, again, it's just, to me, indicative of our need to actually formally push back against religion in this country, because there's nothing that they won't try to fucking godify.
Hilariously enough, the pledge itself was created by a Christian socialist named Francis Bellamy in 1892. So the 1954 edition of Under God, to his pledge, unwittingly reinforced its socialist intentions. Yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance is socialist. Nowadays, there are current evangelicals pushing it as a way to beat the liberals. Such nationalism has always been about hatred, which is rather un-Christian if you ask me.
Hey, trees. All right, so before we jump into this one, yeah, I just think that I don't want to live in a nation that's officially Christian or in a nation that is mostly Christians. First off, I don't think you can have one without the other. I think, in a sense, that's one of the shortcomings of the way this country was founded. It did not, to me, go far enough to formally secularize the government, to exclude religion from the public square, so to speak. And I also think we have to just be honest with ourselves about history. We've lived through and are currently living through sort of the evidence that when given the opportunity, religious people, especially religious fundamentalists, will take control of the government. So really, to address this, I think, involves maybe reimagining the Constitution, the laws, the blase and the Glavinoids, the structuring of the entire system, right? Because none of it's sacred to me. And that's another problem. Because we have such a religious majority, they buy into religious thinking. And I don't think religious thinking serves a democracy. The example that I'm really thinking of right now is the way the founding fathers are treated the same, pretty much, as the church figures or the people who wrote the Bible, right? Like, it's not about, we don't ask ourselves what would serve us today as Americans, which is obviously the only thing that matters. Instead, we say, what was the intent of the founding fathers? The fuck have the founding fathers done for me lately? To me, that's a religious mentality. That is literally their holy and mighty figureheads, the wisdom of the ancients. And so we have to at least confront, I think, people who are Christians and be like, hey, you're really letting us down if you are not actively opposing this effort to make your beliefs into the structures that govern the rest of the population. And I think they would be shocked and appalled that their question and privilege and complicity would dare be called into question. And I think we would be shocked and appalled at their inability to really be critical of efforts in the name of their religion. Which, to be honest with you, I think is why I get frustrated with I get frustrated with the moderates. I get frustrated with the progressives. I get frustrated with the atheists. Because I think we literally know. Like, I think we know that, you know, your friendly neighbor, your friendly family member who just happens to be a Christian, but, you know, isn't a fundamentalist, Trumpleton. I hear that so often now. And you know what? To be honest, I'm gonna just say it. I think it's a fucking excuse to not confront people. It's a fucking excuse to not have uncomfortable conversations with people in your life. You know they're fucked up. You know they're part of the goddamn problem. And, you know, as for them, they're fucking cowards too. Because they see what's going on and they don't have shit to say about it, yet they always punch down. You know, they always want to talk about the sin, and they're always, you know, worried about, they just want the best and all this. And then they manipulate people such that they present themselves to be so fragile, so vulnerable, that nobody dares to challenge them. Nobody dares to call them out on anything, because that would make you the bad person. And for our role in all of it, we're complicit because we just go along with it. We just go right the fuck along with it. But that tense piece between to me, like the progressives, the atheists, the secular people, and what we might call religious moderates, is the environment that allows the extremists to seize power. When we keep talking about they're an extreme minority and da-da-da-da, it's all bullshit. Man, most people who are believers in this country, you know, they have this, gang, if it wasn't so important to them, they wouldn't be fucking Christians anymore. Could we just be real about this shit? Right? Like, if they were really just casual Christians who just go to church on Sunday and it's really not that big, they wouldn't be fucking Christians for fucking 50 fucking years. They wouldn't pray every time something goes wrong in their life. They wouldn't be giving 10% of their fucking income to the goddamn church. But they want to act like they're casuals, and we want to go along with it. So what we do is we just compare them to the most extreme. We're like, well, you know, they weren't there on January 6th building the gallows screaming, hang Mike Pence. So, you know, they're probably really not that big of a problem. All right, let me. So look. No, I'm just making it clear, y'all. I'm not down to live in a Christian nation or a nation full of Christians, because to me, I can't tell the fucking difference.
People like to pretend that the U.S. Declaration of Independence and subsequent federal constitution were completely new creations, wholly separate from the old world of stuffy aristocratic thought from Europe. These documents, in the words of founders like Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, who wrote the Federalist Papers arguing for ratification of the Constitution, are somehow sacred and unreproachable. A growing number of American jurists today, called originalists, believe the founders are the final authority on their political theories, regardless of context or implications. But every great figure stands on the shoulders of giants. No man is an island, devoid of influence. That especially goes for the founders themselves. They were particularly beholden to liberal philosophers. Social contract theory initially began...
DJ, bring it back. Did you just say they were what? They were extremely beholden to liberal philosophy? People, come on, gang, please go fuck yourselves. How obvious is it when you are coming up in school, at least if you grew, you know, American school system, or, you know, when you're studying all this shit in college or whatever, that all they do is brag about the liberal ideas ideals of this nation in the founding. America is the country where all people are equal, and the Statue of Liberty says, give us your poor and your rich. And that's because the whole world just wanted to honor and fucking lick our booty hole because we have just been the fucking melting pot, and oh my God, our story of immigrations, and they came over from the fucking oceans, and then they come across from the south, and they come from all over the world, and they come to America because that's where you get to live the American dream, and you get to be a millionaire, and it's just all so fucking wonderful. God bless America, land that gang, please go fuck yourself. It's so obvious that this country is founded on liberal principles, yet somehow we live in the fucking endless reign of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is like Triple H up in this bitch. Like, nobody likes this motherfucker at this point in his fucking character development, yet he is just on top of the entire industry for year after year after year. And no shade to Paul Levesque. I'm a huge fan. Love that fucking guy. But y'all know what the fuck I'm talking about. The endless reign of Mitch McConnell's tyranny, and now we get new ones. Now we got a whole new a new generation of fucking Lauren Hobart and Marjorie Trader Green. All these fuck faces. It won't go away. And gang, like, can you just rap? Just stop. I know it's Saturday and we're all trying to have a little fun, play some video games, drink some alcohol, smoke some weed. But gang, just for a moment, gang. Please fuck with me for a moment. Donald fuckface Trump has been charged with like 1,900 felonies, and he is still the leading fucking candidate for president for the Republican. They literally seem to have no contingency plan to elect a fucking felon president. Please go fuck. What the fuck is going on in the world right now?
Began by Thomas Hobbes, was the basis of the Declaration of Independence, and John Locke is partially quoted in it. Many founders were part of what they called the Republic of Letters, where intellectuals wrote to one another arguing the merits of various political, metaphysical, ethical, and epistemological topics. Through the Republic of Letters and publishing books, a Frenchman named Montesquieu gave the structure by which our Constitution was formed. They built this upon a common law understanding of the rights of Englishmen, articulated by numerous jurists from a century prior. We can go on for ages about the various influences on the founding generation, but suffice it to say, their influences often speak louder than the founders themselves.
All right, and quickly, gang, the main thing here is not only is the Constitution a remix, but it needs to be remixed perpetually. I don't give a fuck about that document. 1770, whatever, I don't care when it was written. I don't care how great they were for the leaders of their fucking time. None of that shit. Gang, clearly they didn't have a clue about what the needs of the modern world were. Women couldn't vote. Black people weren't quite actually people, and all that type of shit. And yes, there was some more to the story, but for those of us that were completely excluded from participating in society in such ways, you don't know. There really doesn't actually need to be more to the story than that. Like, once you tell me, oh, in this society these dudes created, you were kind of dehumanized, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really too interested in what else you have to say. Oh, but there was tons of freedom and prosperity and so many revolutionary ideas that white men were entitled to. Cool story, bruh. Like, again, gang, I'm quite literally do not think that the Constitution is worth the paper it is written on. Please go fuck yourself. It would make terrible toilet paper. It is not good to smoke. I don't give a fuck if it was written on hemp. The best rolling papers are rice, okay? So I would not even smoke it, and it damn sure is not good in terms of a document by which to live and govern your affairs in 2023. So I am quite serious when I say it is not worth the paper it is written on. We need to have a new constitutional convention about every 5 to 10 years and just take that shit from the the bottom to the motherfucking top and go over every single word and phrase and remix that bitch. It's disgusting that we just have this aged, decrepit, dying document that people actually worship and treat like we cannot fucking change.
A common mistake people make is to think that the revolution began in 1776 when we declared independence from Britain. But in fact, even the day we celebrate is somewhat inaccurate, let alone the broader misconception. The Continental Congress passed the Declaration of Independence on July 2nd. The 4th is merely its publication. They didn't complete signing it until early August 1776. Beyond that, the war had started an entire year prior. It took time before the 13 colonies were willing to take such a tremendous step as declaring independence. After all, like every rebellion before, if they lost the war, they'd be hanged. Declaring independence was a brave step, but still a step. Saying when the revolution began is a tricky definition. Was it when minor rebellions began as early as 1763 with the Black Boys in Pennsylvania, or 1766 with regulators in South Carolina? How about the Stamp Act Congress, Sons of Liberty, Boston Massacre, Gaspee Affair, or Tea Party? This was a gradual change. War broke out in 1775 and independence was declared a year later. But even then, the US government didn't form. First there was the Continental Congress, then in 1781 was the Confederate Constitution. The war mostly ended that year, but would take until 1783 for it to end worldwide. This became a world war with French intervention. One could easily view this war as merely another in the millennium-long French and English rivalry. Anyways, the definition of American Revolution is hazy, but so is anything else in history. Finally, in 1789, was the federal constitution we have today. I can't name every event that could be a beginning of the revolution or government, but none are definitive. Look at that timeline if you want to understand how complicated that is. Defining the starting point is much more of an argument than a clear statement. Notice that none of the key events on that list were driven by the existence of slavery in the 13 colonies. A recent dogma has been to attribute every event in American history to some kind of racial issue, most often to the exclusion of other racial groups, and that is nowhere more apparent than with this myth. We'll even hear pundits claim that slavery is our original sin, somehow forgetting the indigenous population that was here first. The revolution had many reasons, which we will get into, but none of them were the preservation of slavery. Now, many slave owners had annoyances with the British over slavery, such as the Somerset case, which said there was no law legalizing slavery in England, Scotland, or Wales, but the colonies did have specific laws for slavery passed through Parliament. Lord Dunmore, the Virginia governor, did proclaim that slaves of rebels could join the British loyalists to earn their own freedom, which certainly enhanced slave owners' willingness to declare independence. But the war was already happening by that point. It was simply a ploy to gain more loyalist troops, and the Continental Army orchestrated a similar, though far less successful, campaign. In all, around 10,000 black people fought on each side, evenly split. Thomas Jefferson included in his first draft of the Declaration of Independence this passage: "King George has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distinct people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither." The strange irony of a slave owner claiming the king forced the cruel institution upon him is difficult to overcome, but you can see that they were certainly not fighting to preserve slavery. Furthermore,
and again, like, it also shows you even Thomas Fuckface Jefferson was capable of Tucker Carlson level hypocrisy, right? Like, nigger, would you shut the? I swear to God, if you don't get in that fuck, I will beat the dog. I'll beat the black off your. Now, how dare the king bring this atrocity of slavery upon this nation halfway across the world? Were not he? The founding fathers can go fuck themselves, gang. Please don't think I'm playing on this shit. Please, oh my goodness. I hate when people talk about the Constitution like it's a fucking Bible, forgetting that I don't even believe in the fucking Bible. There are no sacred texts. These people are scary, gang. Y'all don't understand. Y'all think I'm just angry for no reason. I'm not angry for no reason. I'm angry because I'm scared and I don't know how to fucking defend myself in this country full of crazy people who literally want us to be beholden to fucking documents that were made centuries ago. Do y'all not realize how nuts that shit is? These people are fucking really, really, really scary. Holy
this kind
shit,
of forgets
I do not want to
that
live
Pennsylvania became one of the first states in the world to abolish slavery in 1780 during the war. And once again, this entire discussion distracts from the one marginalized racial group who did have a powerful impact on the causation of the American Revolution: indigenous tribes. The French and Indian War is the catalyst of this whole thing, and it's so named
trying to license
for a
program
reason.
out.
Possessing land was a primary motivator of both that war and the Revolutionary War. Washington even ordered a massacre of Iroquois in 1779, earning him the Iroquois moniker Town Destroyer. This expedition, led by John Sullivan, was in response to Iroquois massacring colonists in the Wyoming and Cherry Valleys. There were many tribes aligned with the Patriots, and loyalties shifted throughout the war. Patriots massacred innocent Moravian converts at Gnadenhutten, supposedly for their betrayal of the cause. Racist animosities certainly drove this bloodshed, but there's simply no way to reduce the causes of the American Revolution down to racial issues, especially slavery, unlike the Civil War that came nearly a century later. This myth seems to be an anachronistic and ham-handed attempt to frustrate lost causers, to the point of being self-defeating. A common idea is that some kind of new identity formed during the Revolution, but this conflates a bunch of terminology. It's always funny to hear people complain about judging the past with modern notions, and then spout out this myth only a few sentences later. Our current term, nation, was not what the founders were referring to. It is more akin to how we now use country. They simply meant sovereignty, as in independence. But all the other stuff about American identity took a lot longer to form. The founders were quite clear that they thought they were mistreated as Englishmen, not Americans. Most citizens held their loyalty fairly loosely. The idea of nationalism was still decades away. This nationalism leads to the misconception that Paul Revere went to warn the militiamen amassed in Massachusetts that the British are coming. First, he was not the only writer. William Dawes went the same distance while Samuel Prescott completed it after Revere got captured. And secondly, they alerted Minutemen that the regulars are coming, as in regular soldiers who were approaching to disarm militiamen. Everyone was British, obviously. They wouldn't make that differentiation. Their warnings were not yelled either, for need of secrecy, and that made all the difference in the fight against regulars at Lexington and Concord. Some foolishly claim patriot movements like the Sons of Liberty demonstrated a fully formed identity as early as 1765. But at the time, patriot was actually a term of derision for rebels, not for being patriotic. That came much later. They did not identify as Englishmen because they saw England as their nation, merely that that country granted them property and were therefore part of the system of English law. Some would argue that because much of the grievances patriots had against the crown derived from differences created by the French and Indian Wars' aftermath, that a unique American identity grew from the frontier, since expanding into the Ohio Valley was the goal of that war, and King George barred such expansion with his proclamation line. This was best articulated by Frederick Jackson Turner in 1893, arguing, American history has been in a large degree the history of the colonization of the Great West. The existence of an area of free land, its continuous recession, and the advance of American settlement westward explain American development. He thought the American character was forged by the taming of the frontier, defining American exceptionalism as rugged individualism proclaimed from our founding and reformulated over the years by a continuing frontier. First, that obviously pretends indigenous tribes were somehow missing or so savage that they were equivalent to empty land, which he makes explicit by defining the frontier as the meeting point between savagery and civilization. You can still hear his echo in every proclamation of what makes the US the greatest country in the world, even if he's no longer a household name. In either case, no separate identity was forged in the frontier and transferred to the founding generation. Nationalism did not exist yet, and they were reluctant to declare independence. For the most part, a clear national identity would only develop because of our Civil War, a century afterward. One may argue over when and what that identity is or was, but it certainly came after the Revolution.
Interesting.
In the transformation of the term liberal over the past few centuries, some scholars have shoved it aside to claim the American Revolution was a conservative one. Professors try to distinguish themselves as radicals rather than the founders by calling the revolution conservative, but that is contradictory. One cannot have a revolution and conserve the status quo. Drastic change must occur, yet very little changed materially for Americans, and the local rulers remained as such. In a sense, elites merely kept their own power. They tried to preserve their own status, except most of the colonies were administered directly by the crown and therefore overthrew their direct rulers, as in monarchically appointed governors, instituting localized power and upending the old order. Calling that conservative forgets the outcome of almost every revolution throughout history. But if we play the nonsensical materialism game, most wealthy people did in fact maintain their wealth. This obviously negates the enormous change of instituting a new world republic, the first of many to follow. Only the Dutch Revolt and parliamentarians during the English Civil War offered previous examples. The American Revolution transformed the relationship of people and power around the world, liberating them from monarchism and implementing republicanism under a system of constitutional rights and limitations in a fully sovereign state, the first to ever do so. The founders not only changed their colonies into states, but forged a great and ongoing experiment that eventually became the most powerful country in the world and a symbol of independence for the rest of the globe. From the earliest days as patriot movements sprang up elsewhere, fostering numerous other revolutions, including the one in France, to the present with numerous countries quoting our organic documents in their own. It was a revolution, a liberal one.
And the irony, too, is that it gives many other countries the ability to have a more modern democracy than we have, right? Because they used ours. They're like, oh, yeah, those Americans, they did some good shit. Let's change it a little bit to suit our needs and our times. And theirs are therefore like much younger constitutions. And I think that's why ours needs an update. Constant updating.
There is a pervasive idea among Americans that challenging anything in the US Constitution is tantamount to treason. Saying it has flaws is somehow blasphemy. Not only is this obviously wrong, but it forgets the document itself and what the founders had to say about it. Numerous of them campaigned against ratifying the Constitution. They were known as the Anti-Federalists, which is why the Federalist Papers had to argue against them. There were several compromises from the beginning. The fact we have a bicameral legislature is from a compromise, let alone others like counting slaves as 3/5 of a person for the sake of representation in Congress. Contrary to popular belief, only slave owners benefited from slaves being counted whatsoever. So if they were counted as a whole person on the census, that would be more pro-slavery than 3/5. But the fact that there are such compromises in the document itself is rather telling. It's certain
there just shouldn't have been slavery. There just shouldn't have been slavery, and then free black people could be counted like they are now when we do a census or something like that for the purposes of representation. But yeah, it's a little weird quirk of our history.
Not flawless. The founders saw fit to include a mechanism to amend the Constitution, and we've done so 26 times, with several proposed amendments getting congressional approval only to not get ratified. That ability to change our Constitution is one of the things that make it such an extraordinary document, but that requires understanding that it's not flawless. Yet partially due to this misconception, we haven't used the amendment capability since 1992, the third longest period without a new amendment. We tend to speak of the founding generation as though they were all of the same mind, and that they well represented everyone in the original 13 colonies. Even the most minor scrutiny disproves these notions. Around 1/3 of colonists were loyalists, and another third were neutral.
Sorry, gang, I just got to give y'all some amendments real quick that are just so easy. First off, the Constitution should be changed to say that all people are created equal. It should be changed to include other substances in the amendment against prohibition. It should be amended to include Roe v. Wade protections explicitly. It should be amended to include non-discrimination against protected classes. It should be amended to make sure churches pay taxes. I could go on, man. We could. Because I think having churches not pay taxes violates the Establishment Clause. So there's something that needs to be more explicit. There's a whole bunch we could do.
Only 1/3 supported the Patriot cause. The people who framed the Declaration and Constitution were all elites, sent as delegates from their respective state legislatures, and they certainly did not agree with one another all the time. Their memoirs and journals are filled with complaints about the constant bickering it took to get either of these documents made, which one can easily see by the compromises in them and the debate about ratifying the Constitution between Federalists and Anti-Federalists. Beyond that, they were definitely unrepresentative of most patriots. While the Republic began with a modicum of democracy, the voting population consisted of white, property-holding men. Renters, indentures, free people of color, women, and slaves could
Boom. Think about this, gang. You are, in 2023, supposed to be literally worshiping the governing genius of people who would not allow renters, indentures, free people of color, women, or slaves. And please go fuck yourself. We're just tolerant of slavery in said emerging nation. Like, again, gang, the moral of this story is quite simply the founding fathers can go fuck themselves.
Not vote, with a few exceptions. Much of U.S. history has been how these people gained the franchise and further influence in politics. We are a democratic republic, but only after 2 centuries could we truly call ourselves a democracy. The people who claim the United States is not a democracy are either denying reality to gain BS points for the Republican Party, are simply too ignorant to properly understand English, or maliciously want to curtail the progress made throughout American history. There's a more insidious inverse of this myth. Beginning in the 1820s, a conspiracy theory arose saying the founders were all Freemasons, trying to implement some kind of elaborate ruse on the people of the United States, forming a political party in 1828. This conspiracism reverberated through time and eventually combined with anti-Semitic theories of the Zionist-occupied government, or ZOG, which in the 90s changed over to saying that the New World Order was the founders envisioning themselves creating a secret plot to subvert democracy. Of course, this ignores that only around a quarter of the Continental Congress were Freemasons, and it was most certainly not some evil organization trying to subvert democracy. But that's what conspiracists do. They use an absence of evidence, as in the secrecy of Freemasonry, to deny well-established facts and assert a fantasy instead. In our ever-present need to give monocausal explanations for complex issues, people like to boil conflicts down to one word. This can somewhat work, such as with the Civil War, which you can say it was about slavery, but it would be more accurate to say it was caused by the westward expansion of slavery, and that inaccuracy has caused a lot of foolishness, especially with lost causers. Same with the Revolution. Taxes were at the root, but it was not simply that taxes are too damn high. Colonists were some of the least taxed people in the world at the time. Parliament thought they simply needed to pay their fair share for an extremely expensive war waged mostly on their behalf. Of course, Parliament failed to see the massive personal debts incurred by colonists from militia actions and rebuilding after the French and Indian War, along with the refusal of King George to allow English colonists to benefit from conquering the Ohio Valley, save for a Kentucky-sized cutout. But that was Parliament's reasoning for passing numerous taxes. The real problem wasn't the taxes themselves, but the fact that colonists had no representation in Parliament. They refused the idea of virtual representation, as in the English theory that members of Parliament could speak on behalf of all British subjects, rather than their specific districts. The colonies wanted representatives in Parliament before direct taxes could be effected. There were already indirect taxes, through the Navigation Acts, requiring merchants to trade in Britain first after leaving the colonies, but with the various taxes in the 1760s and 70s were a clear violation of the 1689 Bill of Rights, but Parliament regularly ignored such laws. Beyond taxation without representation, there were further acts that angered all colonists as part of this unrepresentative push, such as the Quebec Act, which allowed French-Canadian colonists to begin settling the northern Ohio Valley, and finally the Intolerable Acts, in response to Bostonians dumping tea into the harbor to protest the Tea Act, which mandated that only the British East India Company could ship tea to the colonies and pay for the duties levied on those shipments, hence the Boston Tea Party in protest. How quintessentially British to overreact to improperly steeped tea. The Intolerable Acts closed the port of Boston, dechartered the colony of Massachusetts, and placed it under direct Crown control, tried native Britishers in Britain for any crimes committed in Massachusetts, and forced Bostonians to quarter troops in their homes, all of which pushed Massachusetts over the edge into full-on rebellion, and guaranteed sympathy from the other 13 colonies. So while taxes are at the root, they are not enough of an explanation. This oversimplification myth has led to numerous movements, but most prominent of late has been the Republican Tea Party, which saw Obamacare as too great a tax. It was founded on the myth of a revolution against taxation.
How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage? President Obama, are you listening? The Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
Rather than the
and even now, these people are just radically against taxation for some odd reason and don't realize that we need these services. And then also, they're you know, like they keep jerking off the police budget and the military and a bunch of wasteful spending that doesn't actually help us pave roads or teach kids how to read.
Of taxation without representation, and numerous further insults. Whether or not someone likes the decisions of Congress, we have representation, though there are a few places like territories and federal districts that go without. Liberty is at the heart of what the founding generation was fighting for, and therefore defines what we believe freedom is. But defining what they thought that meant is difficult. Ours was a liberal revolution, as in a political philosophy about liberation. So, liberty from what? Of course, there were plenty of different interpretations at the time, and many since. How one defines liberty is dependent on the form of liberalism it's derived from, and advocacy of a small government is really from neoliberalism of the 1970s. So of course people anachronistically apply that to other forms of liberalism. Firstly, what constitutes small government? Most neolibs, like Ronald Wilson Reagan, actually dramatically expanded government employment, expenditures, and enforcement. Neoliberalism is more like a government reduction for me, not for we. Yet the founders basically didn't talk about the size of government whatsoever, because it simply wasn't that big. They saw government as a tool to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. It's right there in the first sentence of our Constitution. Also, neolibs despise welfare, so that is obviously opposed to the founders' form of liberalism. Perhaps sometime I can make a video about the history of liberalism and its many forms. Most conservatives today are neolibs of some sort, and such ideology just plain did not exist in the 1770s. No matter how much people want to anachronistically see themselves in people who lived 2.5 centuries ago. Because that's what happens with myth-busting. Myths are the stories we tell ourselves to inform our identities. So by challenging that, people get angry, rather than trying to understand history, especially when speaking about the United States founding.
This is the sonorous war cry of a very angry frog.
In either case, I'll delete the comment if it's lying, ban bigotry, and close this section if it becomes too unwieldy. With all the myths I've busted, the latter is highly likely. But comment moderation is necessary for historical discussion, and it's just kind of fun to ban jerks. All of these myths inform people's identities, but to have a better understanding of the world, we must challenge the misconceptions in those myths. Therefore, learning history and becoming better people.
Cute. All right, gang, we have made it to our final destination safely. I appreciate all y'all for tuning in. If you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, share this video with others. I definitely think we still hear a lot of these myths in our discussion, so it was a really good video. Appreciate it. There's a link down there to the channel in the description for them. And please join us and gather if you want to come hang out. That's where we'll be kicking it throughout the weekend. I'm getting ready to get some food and watch some Gin and Truth on YouTube. And then, we'll just kick off our evening. So hope to see you guys around the neighborhood. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow afternoon for the blackout at 1 p.m. and hot program at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to leave us a comment below if you're watching later. Appreciate you. All right, Carrie Ann, sorry to hear that. We'll catch up with you soon. Send me an email if there's if you want to chat. But we'll catch you soon. Thanks so much, gang. Love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in.